Frogs. Creatures often seen leaping across rice paddies or croaking beside lakes, have quietly become one of China's most valuable farmed animals. Yes, frogs. In regions across China, what was once just a seasonal wild catch has transformed into a highly organized aquaculture industry. Farmers are now raising millions of frogs every year, not for display, not for research, but for meat. But do you know how frog farming actually works? How do farmers raise these slippery, jumpy creatures in massive numbers, and how are they processed into a food item sold in restaurants, supermarkets, and international markets? Introduction. A quiet revolution in Chinese aquaculture. Frogs have long been associated with wetlands, rain-soaked rice paddies, and quiet countryside evenings. For centuries, they were simply a part of the natural soundscape in rural China. But today, frogs are no longer just background creatures. They have become central to one of China's most unexpected agricultural revolutions. Across the provinces, especially in humid southern regions, frogs are being farmed in huge numbers, not as pests to be controlled or species to be preserved, but as one of the most efficient and profitable protein sources available. While chicken, pork, and fish still dominate China's meat production, frog meat has carved out a growing niche in the culinary and commercial landscape. Thousands of tons are consumed each year, and with domestic demand continuing to rise and international markets opening up, frog farming has become a full-scale industry supported by science, logistics, policy, and high consumer demand. This isn't a story of roadside vendors catching frogs with nets. This is a deep dive into a highly structured, commercialized supply chain, from frog hatcheries that handle millions of eggs per season to cold storage processing plants exporting vacuum-sealed frog legs around the world. This is the story of how a small amphibian has leapt into the center of modern aquaculture in one of the world's most advanced farming economies. Cultural and economic relevance of frog meat in China. Frog meat holds a unique place in Chinese culinary tradition. It's not just consumed, it's celebrated. Known colloquially in Mandarin as field chicken, frog meat is often compared to poultry for its tenderness and taste, but valued even more for its nutritional properties. It's low in fat, high in protein, and easily digestible, making it ideal for medicinal broths, soups, and stamina-boosting dishes. Regions like Sichuan, Hunan, and Guangdong have long embraced frog-based recipes, using rich spices, herbal sauces, and hot pots to bring out its subtle flavor. The market for frog meat has grown dramatically in recent years, not just in rural communities but in urban restaurants, high-end hotels, and frozen retail chains. Once seasonal and wild-caught, frog meat is now a year-round product found in supermarket freezers and e-commerce platforms alike. In hot pot chains and specialty restaurants, bullfrog dishes are often sold at premium prices. Stir-fried frog legs with chili, clay pot frog stew with pickled vegetables, and deep-fried frog nuggets are just a few examples of how versatile the meat has become in Chinese kitchens. Economically, frog farming offers one of the highest returns on investment per square meter in aquaculture. A small-scale farm on just 500 square meters of land can raise tens of thousands of frogs per cycle, with profit margins often exceeding those of more traditional livestock. Because frogs convert feed into protein efficiently, they have a relatively low feed conversion ratio, making them cheaper to raise than many fish or poultry breeds. For struggling rural economies, frog farming has become a viable and sustainable way to generate year-round income. Species selection and breeding techniques. China's frog farms rely primarily on one species, the American bullfrog, Lithobates catesbayanus. Despite being a North American native, it has been domesticated and optimized for Chinese environments due to its large size, resilience, and fast growth. Adult bullfrogs can weigh up to 500–700 grams, making them ideal for meat production. Their powerful legs yield a high percentage of edible flesh, and they adapt well to both pond and tank farming systems. Breeding bullfrogs begins with a carefully selected broodstock. Farmers choose large, healthy, sexually mature frogs that have displayed resistance to disease and fast growth in past cycles. Breeding occurs during warm, humid months. To simulate the natural environment, farms may adjust water levels, temperature, and even introduce artificial rain or mating calls using sound systems to stimulate reproductive behavior. Female bullfrogs lay their eggs in large clusters that float on the surface of the breeding tanks. Each cluster can contain thousands of eggs. The fertilized egg masses are quickly removed and transferred into nursery tanks or netted enclosures within ponds to protect them from predation and fungal infection. Oxygenation is increased during this time, and antifungal agents are sometimes introduced to prevent egg rot. After hatching, the froglets enter their most vulnerable stage. These newly born tadpoles require steady temperatures, clean water, and appropriate nutrition. They feed on algae, detritus, and specially formulated starter feeds that include protein-rich microparticles. Gradually, over the course of several weeks, their gills are replaced by lungs, their tails shrink, and their limbs develop. By the 6th to 8th week, they are ready for transfer into grow-out tanks as juvenile frogs. Tadpole rearing and environmental control. Raising tadpoles is a delicate operation. A single error in water quality, feeding schedule, or temperature control can result in large-scale losses. For this reason, modern frog farms use a combination of natural and artificial systems to maintain consistency. Water is typically drawn from clean underground wells or filtered river sources, then passed through sediment filters and UV sterilizers to eliminate pathogens. Temperature control is critical. Tadpoles thrive in water temperatures between 24 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius. Any major deviation, especially sudden drops, can delay metamorphosis or even trigger fatal shocks. Some farms use submersible heaters and greenhouse-style roofing to maintain stable conditions during early spring or unexpected cold spells. Oxygen levels are maintained through surface aerators, bubbling stones, or recirculation systems. Ammonia and nitrate levels are tested daily, as waste buildup is a major killer of young frogs. In higher-end facilities, digital sensors monitor water chemistry in real time, and alerts are sent to farm managers' phones if parameters fall outside the acceptable range. Stocking density also plays a role. Overcrowded tanks lead to stress, cannibalism, and poor growth rates. Farmers often divide batches based on size and developmental stage to avoid mixing stronger froglets with weaker ones. The early rearing phase may only last 6 weeks, but it is one of the most labor-intensive parts of the frog farming cycle. Grow-out systems and feed science. Once the froglets are large enough to live independently, they are transferred into grow-out ponds or cement tanks. The layout of these facilities varies depending on the location, scale, and climate of the farm. In warm southern provinces, farmers often use shallow earthen ponds lined with plastic sheets. These ponds are divided into sections using floating barriers to manage feeding zones and cleaning schedules. The ideal growing environment includes access to water, dry resting spots, shaded zones, and feeding platforms. Frogs are semi-aquatic, so they need both land and water areas to regulate their body temperature and moisture. Improper pond design often results in leg injuries, stress, or respiratory issues due to lack of access to dry ground. Feeding is done manually or using floating automatic feeders. Frogs are fed twice or thrice daily, depending on age and environmental conditions. Their diet shifts from high-protein starter feed to mixed formulations that contain protein, fish meal, soybean meal, fat, vegetable oil, fiber, and vitamins. Some farms add probiotics or herbal extracts to improve gut health and immunity. Feed conversion ratios average between 1.2 to 1.5, making frog farming highly feed efficient. Farmers monitor growth by randomly sampling a portion of frogs weekly, weighing them, and adjusting the feed ratio accordingly. Frogs that fall behind in size are often moved to separate ponds to reduce competition and improve overall yield uniformity. With proper care, frogs can reach market size in as little as 4 months. Disease prevention and biosecurity. Frog farming, though profitable, comes with serious biosecurity challenges. Frogs are highly sensitive to pathogens and environmental changes. A single contaminated water source or infected batch can decimate thousands of frogs in a matter of days. Red leg disease, caused by Aeromonas hydrophila, is one of the most feared bacterial infections in frog farms. It affects the skin and legs, leaving frogs paralyzed or dead within 24 to 48 hours. Chytridiomycosis, a fungal infection, has become a global threat to amphibians and can spread rapidly in crowded farming conditions. Parasites such as Rhabdias worms, and protozoan infections like entamoeba, are common in poorly managed farms. To reduce risk, Chinese frog farms now follow strict sanitation and disease monitoring protocols. Entry into frog production zones requires footbaths, protective clothing, and hand sanitation. Tools are cleaned daily, and workers are assigned to specific areas to reduce cross-contamination. Water is disinfected regularly using UV systems or chlorine derivatives. Tanks are often emptied, cleaned, and left dry for several days before reuse. Sick frogs are isolated immediately and tested. In some farms, veterinary staff conduct weekly inspections and keep detailed health logs on each pond or batch. Antibiotics are used sparingly and only under veterinary guidance, especially in operations that export frog meat internationally, where residue standards are strictly enforced. Instead, emphasis is placed on prevention through proper feeding, clean water, and environmental balance. Harvesting methods and transport. Harvesting takes place early in the morning or just after sunset when temperatures are low, and the frogs are less active. This reduces stress and injury during handling. In smaller farms, workers manually net the frogs from the ponds. In large commercial farms, water is gradually drained to concentrate the frogs in one section for easier capture. Once harvested, the frogs are rinsed with clean water to remove dirt or debris. They are then sorted by size and health. Frogs that meet the criteria for processing are transferred to temporary holding tanks, often with oxygenation systems and cooling plates to reduce stress and preserve muscle quality. Any sick, deformed, or underweight frogs are separated and not used for processing. For live frog sales, especially in domestic wet markets, frogs are packed in aerated containers and transported in climate-controlled vans. These frogs are sold live for maximum freshness. For factory processing, frogs are transported to licensed slaughterhouses or processing plants in less than 12 hours from harvest. Inside the processing factory, frog meat processing in China now mirrors modern meatpacking practices for poultry and fish. Facilities are stainless steel lined, climate controlled, and governed by strict hygiene protocols. The frogs arrive and are immediately stunned using ice slurry or cold water immersion, which slows metabolism and renders them unconscious. Once immobilized, workers swiftly slaughter and skin the frogs. The skin is removed in one pull from the hind legs to the head, revealing clean, white flesh beneath. After skinning, the frogs are eviscerated, and the internal organs are removed. The meat is washed in chlorinated water, rinsed again with chilled potable water, and visually inspected under white light for bruises or contamination. Processed frogs are then divided into whole or segmented portions. Frog legs, being the most desirable, are often separated and packed individually, while whole frogs are vacuum-packed and flash-frozen. Packaging includes QR codes for traceability, nutritional data, origin certificates, and expiration dates. Packaged meat is then stored at 0 to 18 degrees Celsius and distributed within 48 hours. Waste management and byproduct utilization. Frog processing results in several byproducts, skins, bones, and internal organs. Rather than discard them, many modern frog facilities utilize every part of the animal. Frog skin is dried and processed into powder for traditional medicine or used in the production of collagen-rich skincare products. Frog oil extracted from fatty tissue is sometimes refined into ointments believed to help with inflammation and burns. Organs are composted or processed into animal feed in some facilities. Wastewater is filtered, settled, and treated before being reused in irrigation or safely discharged. Some farms have begun experimenting with closed-loop systems to recycle organic matter as pond fertilizer or biogas fuel. These zero-waste approaches improve profit margins and reduce environmental impact, aligning with China's national goals for sustainable agriculture. Distribution and domestic, export markets. Once processed, frog meat is sold across multiple channels. In domestic markets, it's supplied to restaurants, hotels, wholesale wet markets, and increasingly, to e-commerce platforms where consumers can order frozen frog legs online. In urban supermarkets, branded frog meat products are labeled as clean protein and targeted toward health-conscious families. Packaging highlights frog meat's lean profile, low cholesterol, and amino acid content. Internationally, frog meat from China is exported to France, Belgium, the Netherlands, the UAE, and parts of Southeast Asia. Frozen frog legs, cleaned and vacuum-sealed, are packed into refrigerated shipping containers and exported under strict phytosanitary certification. Logistics companies now work closely with frog processing factories to ensure compliance with each importing country's regulations. All export shipments include documentation for species verification, disease-free status, and traceability. Government policies and environmental oversight. The Chinese government has formalized frog farming under aquaculture legislation. Farmers must register their operations, comply with environmental protection laws, and pass food safety audits. Authorities regulate the introduction of non-native species like bullfrogs and limit their farming to closed systems that prevent escape into wild habitats. Permits are required to breed, process, and sell frogs, and government inspectors conduct random audits to ensure compliance. China's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs has introduced subsidies for eco-friendly pond construction, wastewater treatment systems, and disease prevention research. In some provinces, frog farming is included in poverty alleviation programs, allowing rural communities to access microloans and government training. Profit models and real-world case studies. On average, a medium-sized frog farm raising 100,000 frogs can generate annual profits of 200,000 yen to 500,000 yen. Operating costs include feed, water, electricity, disease prevention, labor, and processing or transport. Larger operations benefit from economies of scale and vertical integration. One real-world case is a cooperative in Jiangxi province that raises 300,000 frogs per year. The cooperative processes its frogs in-house and sells vacuum-packed frog legs under its own brand. The group supplies 20 restaurants and 5 retail chains in the region. Since adopting biosecurity upgrades, they've reported a 20% decrease in mortality and 15% increase in meat yield. Another example is a tech-driven farm in Fujian using AI to manage water quality, auto feeders, and disease alerts. They reduced labor by 40% and now produce over 2 million frogs annually with less than 4% mortality. Challenges, risks, and climate impact. Frog farming is not without risk. Disease remains the #1 threat, followed by feed price volatility and unpredictable weather patterns. Rising temperatures have forced some farms to install cooling systems and shade structures to prevent heat stress. Flooding, especially in low-lying areas, can wash frogs out of enclosures and destroy infrastructure. Meanwhile, drought reduces water availability, affecting hatchery and grow-out operations. Climate change poses a longer-term risk, potentially altering breeding seasons, growth rates, and susceptibility to pathogens. Some research institutions are now exploring heat-resistant frog strains and climate-controlled farming modules. Additionally, public perception of frog farming can fluctuate. Animal welfare groups have raised concerns over handling and slaughter methods. In response, some farms now offer open house programs, live streaming farm conditions, and third-party certifications to build trust with consumers. The future of frog farming in China continues to grow in scale, sophistication, and international reach. As consumer preferences shift toward leaner, more sustainable protein sources, frog meat is expected to capture more of the domestic protein market. Technology is playing a larger role in every part of the chain, from smart hatcheries and automated feeders to disease detection, AI, and e-commerce logistics. Partnerships between universities, biotech firms, and large-scale producers are also increasing, bringing innovation into breeding, nutrition, and waste recycling. In the next decade, frog farming may evolve into a blueprint for efficient, circular, and scalable aquaculture systems not just in China, but globally. What started as a small village practice is now a billion-yuan industry leaping ahead, one frog at a time.